Did you know? Bumper cars have been used for scientific research. Bumper cars have been used by scientists to study collisions and the effects of impact on the human body. By studying the physics of bumper car collisions, researchers hope to better understand the mechanics of car accidents and improve safety standards. Bumper cars are created with special rubber linings on the outsides of the cars to protect against damage. These rubber linings are what soften the impact and help the cars bounce off of each other. The bumper cars also run on electricity, carried by a pole on the back of the car that leads up to a wire grid in the ride's ceiling. This grid carries the electricity that runs the car. Electrical energy carried to the cars from the grid is converted to kinetic energy, some of which is converted to heat. Newton's third law of motion comes into play on the bumper cars. This law, the law of interaction, says that if one body exerts a force on a second body, the second body exerts a force equal in magnitude and opposite in direction on the first body. It's the law of action-reaction, and it helps to explain why you feel a jolt when you collide with another bumper car. When bumper cars collide, the drivers feel a change in their motion and become aware of their inertia. Though the cars themselves may stop or change direction, the drivers continue in the direction they were moving before the collision. This is why it's important to wear a seatbelt while driving a real car, since otherwise you could suffer injury from being thrown forward in a collision. The masses of the drivers also affect the collisions. A difference in mass between two bumper car riders will mean that one rider experiences more change in motion than the other, or more of a jolt. The type of collision, velocity of the cars, and mass of the individual drivers all come into play in bumper car collisions. Did you know? Riders often experience near weightlessness as they approach the top of a pendulum ride. If the ride is the type that makes a complete 360-degree circle, they experience a feeling of complete weightlessness. Pendulum rides consist of a pendulum-like structure with a gondola at one end. The gondola is where riders are seated and secured with safety harnesses. The pendulum arm is usually a long, rigid beam that is attached to a central pivot point. The other end of the pendulum arm is connected to the gondola. The primary force responsible for the motion of the pendulum ride is gravity. When the gondola is in the horizontal position, gravity exerts a downward force on it, and the passengers inside. As the ride swings, gravity pulls the gondola and its occupants downward, creating the sensation of being in freefall. This is why riders often experience a feeling of weightlessness during the ride. As the gondola swings back and forth, a centripetal force is generated. This force acts toward the center of the swinging motion and keeps the gondola moving in a circular path. It is the combination of gravity and centripetal force that gives riders the sensation of being pushed and pulled in different directions, creating the thrilling and dynamic ride experience. Did you know? Galileo first introduced the concept of free fall. His classic experiments led to the finding that all objects free fall at the same rate, regardless of their mass. A freely falling body is an object that is moving under the influence of gravity only. These objects have a downward acceleration toward the center of the Earth. Newton later took Galileo's ideas about mechanics and formalized them into his laws of motion. Free-fall rides are made up of three distinct parts: the ride to the top, the momentary suspension, and the downward plunge. In the first part of the ride, force is applied to the car to lift it to the top of the free-fall tower. The amount of force that must be applied depends on the mass of the car and its passengers. The force is applied by motors, and there is a built-in safety allowance for variations in the mass of the riders. After a brief period in which the riders are suspended in the air, the car suddenly drops and begins to accelerate toward the ground under the influence of the Earth's gravity. Did you know? Roller coasters can be wooden or steel, and can be looping or non-looping. Wooden coasters are non-looping. They're also not as tall and not as fast, and they don't feature very steep hills or as long a track as steel ones do. Tubular steel coasters allow more looping, higher and steeper hills, greater drops and rolls, and faster speeds. What you may not realize as you're cruising down the track at 60 miles an hour is that the coaster has no engine. The car is pulled to the top of the first hill at the beginning of the ride, but after that the coaster must complete the ride on its own. You aren't being propelled around the track by a motor or pulled by a hitch. The conversion of potential energy to kinetic energy is what drives the roller coaster, and all of the kinetic energy you need for the ride is present once the coaster descends the first hill. Once you're underway, different types of wheels help keep the ride smooth. Running wheels guide the coaster on the track. Friction wheels control lateral motion, movement to either side of the track. A final set of wheels keeps the coaster on the track even if it's inverted. Compressed air brakes stop the car as the ride ends. Did you know? You will feel lighter at the top of the Ferris wheel, and heavier when you are at the bottom. The second law of motion has to do with the behavior of objects when existing forces are not balanced. In a Ferris wheel, forces are not balanced. Objects that have circular motion have something called centripetal force. Centripetal means center-seeking. The centripetal force always points to the center of the circle. Ferris wheel physics is directly related to centripetal acceleration. Acceleration is a measure of how fast velocity, speed and direction changes over a certain amount of time. This acceleration results in riders feeling heavier or lighter depending on their position on the Ferris wheel. The centripetal acceleration always points towards the center of the circle. So at the bottom of the circle, the centripetal acceleration is pointing up, so riders feel heavier than their true weight. At the top of the circle, it is pointing down, so riders feel lighter than their true weight. The motion of a Ferris wheel affects your body's weight, which varies depending on where you are on the ride. The riders only feel their true weight when the centripetal acceleration is pointing horizontally and has no vector component parallel with gravity. This results when the riders are exactly halfway between the top and the bottom. They are the same height as the center of the Ferris wheel.
So now this is the end of our vlog for today. I hope you guys enjoy our videos. Ayan, so, sana may natutunan kayo kasi yung mga rides na sinakyan namin is related to physics. Yes!
Hindi mga sinakyan namin na ride, is huwag na sasakyan kasi masuka.
Hoy, kahit pala nagsuka sa amin.
Yeah, Abiga achievement for us.
Yes. Okay, so now as we end this video, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment.
Naging vlogger din na.
Okay, like and subscribe. Okay na. 1, 2, 3, say bye-bye. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Bye!
희망이란 끈 잡고 살아 이 험한 현실에서 아직 붙잡아두고 싶은 꿈 넘고 힘